I live downtown in Montreal, Quebec. My name is Taylor Morey. I'm 34 years old. I believe in taking care of myself and a balanced diet and a rigorous exercise routine. In the morning, if my face is a little puffy, I'll do nothing about it. Sometimes when I'm motivated to exercise, I do stomach crunches. I can do one now. In the shower, I use Head & Shoulders, then Old Spice. I smell like if sandalwood could be sad. I always use an aftershave lotion with no alcohol because I'm straight edge, then moisturizer because I'm flaky, socially and skin-wise. Hi, I'm Taylor Morey. I'm a comedian, writer, filmmaker, and musician, and I am lonely. It's taken me a long time to figure out how I want to come at this subject for a lot of reasons. Mostly because, couch, and also PlayStation. But because this idea of male loneliness is so broad and multifaceted and incorporates a lot of subcultures that frankly I have no interest in, nor do I want to make a 3-hour video essay, I had to really think about what I'm trying to say and who I want to hear it. And unfortunately, it has to be you, random people on the internet.
Fucking internet.
Also, unfortunately, I'm making this little housekeeping disclaimer portion before we really get into it. I'm not an academic, I'm not an expert, I'm a struggling creative who went to film school at 30. I can only speak for myself, and while I will back up and defend everything I say in this video, everything I'm saying is, for the most part, my opinion. You can agree, you can disagree, and you also don't have to tell me about it. I'm going to be talking about a lot of extremely uncomfortable topics: depression, suicide, addiction, abuse, and more, and I won't be censoring anything. 1, I'm pretty lazy, and 2, it degrades the quality of our discourse the more we are forced to capitulate to social media algorithm speak and coded language. I understand why it's done, but I have no interest in making money from this, so I will be speaking plainly. When I first started learning about the male loneliness epidemic, I thought, oh cool, we men are finally going to address these weird, imposed ideas of what it means to be a man. But in reading more about it, the more I realized how closely aligned with the manosphere and the red pill it is, which we'll definitely talk about later on. I should also mention that a lot of this essay is very broadly categorizing people into men, women, male, female. I'm aware of and not denying or ignoring any other gender identity, but as unqualified as I am to be talking about it in an academic way, I'm even more unqualified to talk about the experiences of people with differing gender expressions. Look, am I a strapping young lad, a mountain of traditional and indisputable masculinity with perfect features and a massive empire of success? Obviously. But I do not support, agree with, tolerate, like, interact with, or endorse in any way red pill or manosphere types. If you are one of those guys looking to commiserate about how feminism ruined men or extol the virtues of people like Myron Gaines or Clavicular or HS Tiki Talkie, or if you want to talk about how we're living in the Matrix, or if you're here to convince me that classic Simpsons isn't some of the best TV ever made,
you've got some attitude, mister.
Besides, you're wrong!
Please know that I do have some empathy. All those men are clearly broken and consumed by insecurity. That being said, this isn't for those guys, and I kindly and calmly suggest that you fuck off from this video. But if you are particularly a young man who's teetering on the precipice of that world, or if you're somebody who would like another perspective on male loneliness, or if you're just some rando entranced by the likely negative impacts that making this video will have on my personal life, please continue watching. Are men all right?
No. What?
Much has been said already about the male loneliness epidemic. The Los Angeles Times, Psychology Today, The Guardian, Western Oregon University, even scrolling the social media slop algorithm will feed you breathless coverage about how lonely men are. Hundreds of articles, thousands of videos, all telling you that men have been left behind. And some of them present some pretty stark realities. In the course of about 3 decades, 55% of men reported having at least 6 close friends. Today, that number has been cut in half, and 15% of men have no close friends at all. And that's within my lifetime. In Canada, men account for approximately 75% of all suicides. In my home province of British Columbia, men made up 81% of overdose deaths in 2020. 18.7% of men report problems with alcohol as opposed to 12.5% among women, and men have lagged behind significantly in education and job prospects. Shit, in 2023, the US Surgeon General declared loneliness a public health emergency. But did you catch that? Not male loneliness, loneliness. And actually, if you look at the data, men and women report similar levels of loneliness and overall life satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Retirees are famously lonely. Teenagers, married, middle-aged adults. Why do we have a male loneliness epidemic specifically? My contention is that it manifests itself externally, in violence, in self-harm, in the statistics I told you a second ago, and it festers because of the culture that's been allowed to metastasize online. So, how did we get here? A friend of mine said that in some way we're still living in the world of our grandparents. We envision the same things for ourselves that they did. We believe you're supposed to follow the milestones, get the diplomas, find a partner, get a house, work at the same job forever, get old, retire, travel, die in an old folks' home. Men work, women rear children and take care of the home. Men provide, women consume, men protect, women are attacked by men. And this shit didn't come from nowhere. It's been baked into our social culture for a very long time. I don't have the time or interest in following it all the way back and going into how different cultures evolve, and that's not the purpose of this video. But suffice to say, it came from men a long time ago, and they're all dead, so there's no reason it can't change. For better or worse, that's not the reality we live in anymore. The vast majority of people cannot support a family on a single salary, and far too many educated and hard-working people struggle to support themselves on a full-time job. Record unemployment, stagnant wages, and growing income inequality for the last 40 to 50 years have only been amplified by cancerous technocrats. Yet many men and women still believe men should be the breadwinner, the provider, the wallet. Consider for a moment this clip from Breaking Bad in which Gus monologues to Walt about coming to work for him in light of Walt's fracturing family.
What does a man do, Walter? A man provides for his family.
This costs me my family.
When you have children, you always have family. They will always be your priority, your responsibility. And a man provides. And he does it even when he's not appreciated, or respected, or even loved. He simply bears up, and he does it because he's a man.
I've seen so many comments from guys saying, yeah, that's what we do, that's what it's like to be a man, which is sad, both in and of itself, and because the show is saying this type of behavior is what is going to cause a lot of needless suffering and death. Gus is playing Walter. He's appealing to Walt's insecurity and his ego. If Walter had dealt with his character flaws, he wouldn't be manipulated like that, and there also wouldn't be a show. But these guys' explicit agreement with Gus shows their own insecurity and their ego. There are a couple of terms that we're kind of dancing around here, and I do have to address them at some point. patriarchy, and toxic masculinity. Don't tune out. Believe me, I did for a long time, and it took me a while to understand what those things actually mean. And to be honest, a lot of people use them incorrectly, and a lot of people who use them are, well, kind of annoying and boring. If the only time you hear these terms is when they're being used to belittle, yeah, you're going to have an aversion to them. And I will say that as a leftist, the left often sucks at messaging. So, let's define our terms before we go any further. Patriarchy is a system which overwhelmingly favors men in positions of authority, wealth, and influence, as well as in more subtle ways. Not all men, by the way, primarily older, straight white, wealthy men. Under the patriarchy, this means that women are generally made to accept less power, autonomy, safety, and authority. But it also does not mean that the average men, like you watching this and me, have an easy or even good life. There are exceptions, of course, but it's an overall system that is bigger than any individual, and the insidiousness of it is that it can be upheld by individuals, men and women. Remember a minute ago I mentioned women who see men as a wallet? Yeah, they do it too. I fell down some weird YouTube rabbit hole recently that was explaining the sprinkle movement, which basically is just codifying being a gold digger and saying it's a worthy or feminist pursuit. It's not. It's an adult that's been sold a lie that financial dependency is freedom. There are also proponents of keeping women down and think it's feminist because it's under the guise of getting a man to pay for everything. That is not feminist, it's patriarchal because the man with the money is still the only one in the relationship with any tangible power. And the patriarchy is not your friend. Our other tricky term is toxic masculinity. It's another term I'm not a big fan of, and yes, it absolutely gets used incorrectly all the time. Because the internet amplifies extremeness, it's often people shouting this that get the most attention. It's the way things work now. Sometimes I like to think of it instead as dumb man shit, just leftover impulses that I have just because I'm a dude, and how we've been socialized from childhood. Toxic masculinity is basically an over-reliance on outmoded ideas of what it means to be a man. You're violent, aggressive, unfeeling, disrespectful of women, homophobic, and unnecessarily stoic. And I want to address the use of stoic for a second, because that's become very popularized by the red pill scene. Stoicism is an ancient Greek philosophy with the ultimate goal of living a well-reasoned life. Now, I can't say I've heard many modern men interested in Stoicism talk a great deal about ethics, much less physics, but they have a great deal of interest in emotional repression. Stoicism posits that passion, anxiety, and insecurity are to be done away with in favor of discipline and rationality. Not a horrendous idea for insecurity and anxiety, and sure, it helps to be a calm person in a storm and not lose your head when things don't go your way. But passion, not going to keep you dedicated to much of anything if you're not passionate about it. And unfortunately, what we call negative emotions are a part of life, and managing, understanding, processing, and feeling your emotions is, to me, the greater ideal. By the way, it is kinda ironic that the hyper-masculine manosphere champions a Greek philosophy, apparently unbothered by the pervasive homoeroticism throughout much of ancient Greek culture. It's almost like ignoring uncomfortable historical detail is kind of their thing. Traditional masculinity demands boys and men to cry only at acceptable times. At war documentaries, your country's flag, the death of a tiny horse, when you have one annoying beard hair in the periphery of your vision and you smooth it down but then it keeps popping back up. Or that scene in the movie 50-50 where Joseph Gordon-Levitt says,
Right, but how do you know that it's going to last long enough to, I don't know, wake up in the middle of the surgery, or that you make sure that I'm going to wake up after? Mom?
Okay, so I watched that scene again while I was recording this. I don't know how, but this is the only time that I've watched that and not cried. I watched it twice, during writing this, and both times immediately. Ugh. You know, and I've cried plenty of times since the first time I saw that, but I often think of summer 2 years ago. I was here scoping out jobs, housing, and in desperate need of a vacation. I visited the St. Joseph Oratory, and the whole time I was just feeling off. I don't really know how to describe it more than that. Weird for someone who spent very little time in the company of Catholics to start feeling some Catholic guilt. And as I was leaving, I was listening to music, and Garden Song by Phoebe Bridgers came on, and almost immediately, I just started bawling, just crying my eyes out. I had to go find a bus shelter to sit in because it just felt like all the unprocessed emotions from the last 5 years, from 2019 to 2024, just came out all at once. Job losses, breakups, friendship loss, stress, failures, rejection, for 10 minutes just poured out of me. So if you need a good place to cry in Montreal, I know 2 bus stops. But to quote Midnight Gospel, this is what you do with heartbreak. You cry. All that is to say, when traditional masculinity makes demands of you that are harmful to you and others, and yet its adherents are fanatical in their devotion to the idea, yeah, pretty fucking toxic. And by the way, I'm not immune to any of this shit. I have insecurities about where I am in life and my value to a woman, even though I can tell you all the shit about the patriarchy and the economy. I have dumb man shit in me. I saw a guy cover his ears when a fire truck went by with its siren, and even though it kind of hurt my ears too, I thought to myself, put your arms down, dude. Let those harmful frequencies and decibels raw dog your ears like a real man. When the world expects you to be a certain thing, as it simultaneously takes away your ability to be that thing, yeah, it's gonna fuck you up. The world has become increasingly difficult to navigate socially and economically, and there are people who like to keep it that way. In researching for this essay, I discovered a song from the 1940s documenting the idea of the loneliness industry, the loneliness economy. Large corporations make billions of dollars by keeping you lonely. Well, that's pretty much it. Wow. Prescient. By the way, breaking the fourth wall for a sec, that instrumental clip you just heard, I heard in an interactive Flash animation called Windows RG, really good edition, that came out in 2001. I have carried that instrumental loop in my brain for a quarter of a century, and I only just learned it's a real song called Mama's Got a Baby. I don't know why I'm slowly turning into an oldies radio DJ, but that was Mama's Got a Baby by Jelly Roll Morton, released in 1940. Morton was married to a showgirl named Maple, which shows how old this song is, because it came from a time when hot women were named Maple. Anyway, the most obvious culprits in the loneliness industry are the apps, which in itself proves how pervasive and recognizable dating apps are because we call them the apps. Even fuck doesn't get that kind of respect. It's still called the F word, not the word. There's a great video that I've linked below, among a great many other resources that helped in researching this, called Dating Apps Destroyed a Generation. It's a lot of facts and figures to throw at you, but the key takeaway is that the dating apps and their executives have benefited enormously from the veneer of giving people a chance to connect romantically and preying on loneliness, love, and vulnerability while simultaneously squandering billions of dollars in customer and investor capital. Or, in other words, line goes up, good for executives, bad for you. Line goes down, bad for executives and you. Yay! Dating apps, social media, AI companions, food kits, Amazon, Coca-Cola, streaming services, liquor companies, fucking Hallmark, all benefit from the little voice in your head that says, maybe I'm unlovable. And the solution they sell is consumption of their product. The key to community is your wallet. In the 1989 book, The Great Good Place, Ray Oldenburg conceived of the idea of the third place. This is not to be confused with third place, where I've spent much of my life. A third place is distinct from first, your home, and second, your workplace. And Oldenburg, along with his co-author on subsequent publications, Karen Christensen, defined 7 stipulations of what makes a third place. Open and invited, comfortable and informal, convenient, unpretentious, having regular visitors, conversation is the main activity, and laughter is frequent. These can be churches, cafes, bars, libraries, gyms, malls, community centers, and parks. In America and much of Canada at large, third places have been disappearing for years. I'm not bummed about church being less popular, even though it's often replaced by equally irrational and dogmatic systems that border on religious devotion. But many of these places have been disappearing over the last few decades because of economic changes and pressure. Cafes and bars are more expensive, people have less free time and money, libraries are disappearing, malls are shutting down because of evolving spending habits. I'm very lucky to be living in a city where all of these potential places are relatively quite healthy. But all of these pressures coming from mega corporations like Amazon or property management companies that are happy to let buildings remain empty and derelict instead of doing something for the community they're bleeding are changing the way we interact with the spaces around us. But it's also social conditioning and changes in culture, the ways in which we fragment from those in our immediate vicinity. I live in an apartment building with about 20 floors with 2 to 10 units per floor. That's at least 200 opportunities for me to build community where I live, and every day I don't do it. I know one neighbor's name a few floors above me, and that's it. Not the old Belgian dude, or the Indian family, or the cute girl down the hall. Like I said, I'm not immune to this shit. I've been wanting to push myself to talk to strangers while I'm out, and I will grant you, it is hard to do. Just a compliment or a comment here and there, and you'll see how it brightens people's day. Sometimes I think of something, but I'm pretty sure it'll just be dog shit.
You look pretty.
What did you say?
I said you look shitty.
By the way, if Isla Fisher sees this, I am single. And as long as we're taking personal responsibility here, guys on dating apps, scoochin'. What the fuck? I see the messages you send. I see the way you behave. I have friends who show me the shit they get. Wow! All that stuff you're doing, don't. Sit on my face as a first message? Hi, how are you? What's your favorite color? Holy shit, man. Anything. And this is where I'm gonna get scoldy, because up to now, I've been talking about external pressures and certain subcultures of guys, but you,
me? The Dragonborn.
need to buck the fuck up. Telling a tall woman, ooh, I want to go climbing, jerking off on the phone, dick pics, you have a temper when she tells you to stop doing something, love bombing. It's so easy to not do that. These aren't just mistakes and indiscretions. This isn't being awkward or shy. This is a lack of respect. This is seeing women as lesser people who should be grateful for whatever low effort shit you throw their way. Grow the fuck up. There may be an epidemic of loneliness, but there is also an epidemic of low quality, shitty men, and you are old enough to know better. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you can't treat others with respect, you can't expect anyone to want to be around you. You don't get to complain about being lonely or wonder why you're not getting dates and then act like that. Now, I know a lot of men who are very publicly, stridently feminist seem to have horrible skeletons in their closet. They use this public persona almost as a shield to cover up their shitty, abusive behavior. I don't want to give that impression, so let me balance the scales a little bit. Women, do you dummies? This is the perfect time to tell you about today's sponsor, the deep and infinite void in which I live. And the letter S. When I was a kid in the 90s, between episodes of Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, Rugrats, and Rocko's Modern Life, we had commercials from the Concerned Children's advertisers. There were a lot of anti-drug PSAs, anti-bullying, pro-media literacy, house hippos, and this ad called Boutique.
Don't settle for just being yourself. Be a new you in only minutes. Why be you when you can be me?
Your before photograph.
Perfect image package. Ooh, why be you when you can be me?
Step up for your after photograph.
Why let someone else decide who you should be?
Slightly creepy when you're 7 years old, but as I came to writing this essay 27 years later, why be you when you can be me started ringing in my head. Who knew? In that time, the most desperate, blatant, and naked why be you when you could be me would not be coming from the old standbys of the fashion industry or Hollywood, but the manosphere. By the way, I'm not going to be playing any of their content as B-roll or to directly comment on, because I don't want to watch any more of them than I've already had to, and I don't want to show them plying their trade. And while I don't want to talk about them too much, I believe they are both architects and symptoms of the social rot that I'm talking about, with a deep well and ecosystem that sells certainty and blamelessness in the face of insecurity and emotional trauma. And for what it's worth, as nuanced, even-handed, and fair as I'm really trying to be, when I watch them, I'm about 5 seconds away from turning into Dana Gould.
You cunt! You fucking cunt!
The manosphere's roots lie in the 70s and 80s with the men's liberation movement, which ironically had a largely feminist component and has major reflections of what I'm arguing here today, some 40-odd years later, that traditional masculinity and its rigidity ultimately hurt men as well as women. As an aside, in researching, I came across this little anecdote about Warren Farrell, who was initially a board member in the National Organization for Women, because you make a women's organization, you're going to want a dude to run it, I guess. He made some debatable claims that are pretty common to this day about disadvantages that men face and eventually became anti-feminist. However, in 1971, within the National Organization for Women, he founded the National Task Force on the Masculine Mystique. Apparently, this new task force had nothing to do with the X-Men, and interestingly, 55 years later, manosphere types are not beating those homoerotic allegations. Regardless, the rotting online communities of pickup artists, men's rights activists, incels, plain old-fashioned misogynists, sigma males, malignant narcissists, and men going their own way found dark corners of the internet from which their beliefs could fester, calcify, and radicalize. And by the early 2010s, the manosphere had formed into this loose, sometimes self-contradictory Frankenstein's monster of impotent rage. Along with the continued rise and culture embrace of egomaniacs come fascists, the manosphere became part of mainstream culture. And over a decade in, we see no signs of it slowing down, instead coalescing with the vapid, wildly materialistic, amoral influencer space to create a fertile breeding ground for the insecure, pathetic, virulently hateful, and valueless likes of Clavicular, Myron Gaines, Andrew Tate, HS Tiki Talkie, I hate that name, Sneeko, the Whatever Podcast, and whatever other cretins, losers, and parasites choose to associate themselves with them. By the way, I do want to underscore for a second my use of the word losers, because they will have you convinced, and a lot of people will have you convinced, that having money makes you not a loser, or not having money makes you a loser. Trust me, the biggest losers in the world are also some of the richest people in the world. How much of a loser do you have to be to email a pedophile on Christmas morning asking where a good party is, and then the pedophile reads it and goes, ew? So, how do these redundant piles of protoplasm function and gain relevance and wealth? Simple. Wild claims that stir up attention in an environment geared for brief bursts of outrage, which the technocrats saw to creating over the last 2 decades, appealing to insecurity, the age-old tactic prevalent in nearly all advertising since its inception, and selling the solution to the problem you didn't know you had. Several of these bloodsuckers, like Tate, sell a course on how to be a real alpha male. Not only is the alpha phenomenon a faulty premise, but if you're a real alpha, would you be letting another man tell you how to do it? By Tate's own description, he exploited women who worked for him in a camgirl business before OnlyFans existed. This is also why they hate OnlyFans models. And invested heavily in Bitcoin and crypto while it was still weak to gain his initial pile of money. Then you show off a little bit of flash, rent luxury vehicles and homes, sell some bullshit course about how to make it just like him but not really, market it to desperate men, give them a discount for singing his praises on social media, rinse, repeat. Vultures selling the fake solution to the insecurity they exploited. It's amazing the amount of money you can make if you don't give a fuck about other people. Maybe it's my age, I'm 34, and these dudes are primarily targeting disenfranchised teens and men in their early 20s, males who are just of a different generation than me. So when learning about looks maxing, for instance, and a lot of terminology surrounding these different subcultures, I am such an old man. I am like an 80-year-old who is just told I have to scan a QR code to see the menu at a restaurant. Wrist cell, juggernaut law, canthal tilt. What the actual fuck are you talking about? But the benefit of that is that I have seen grifters like this before, because I spent some of my formative online years exploring the skeptic community. There's very little substantive difference between a medium telling you they're talking to your dead relative and a manosphere chud telling you every one of your problems can be boiled down to women being more educated. I'm not immune to insecurity, believe me. But what they're selling is not real to somebody my age and who's not connected to this swarm of men who, honestly, I consider to be very weird. These ideologies are basically incoherent and fall apart when put up to any level of real scrutiny, and they rely on exploiting vulnerable people who may be unable to mount a sophisticated defense against these kind of ideas, especially teens and young men. This primordial soup of glorified knuckle-draggers wouldn't be able to survive without the ecosystem that technocrats ensured social media would provide, an ecosystem built on enrapturing the attention of young people. Look, there are a lot of wild, spurious claims that the manosphere makes. They, like other right-wing extremists, have created a veritable hydra of bullshit. You can debunk a claim with studies, surveys, polls, and take hours to explore that single topic in good faith, only for 2 more insane claims to have sprouted up in its place. To them, the sheer volume of misinformation is equally valuable as the substance of misinformation. But 2 of these claims I want to have a closer look at. The 80-20 rule. I hadn't heard of this until I watched the miniseries Adolescence, which was an inspiration for wanting to write this in the first place. The idea is essentially a corruption of some small polls taken by OkCupid. There's a lot of deep diving that I'm not interested in and doesn't take away from the substance of my argument. It's also a corruption of the Pareto principle, which is basically a mathematical idea that roughly 80% of consequences come from roughly 20% of causes, and is typically applied in economics, computing, occupational health and safety. I've seen a claim that it is a law in physics, which no, there's no scientific backing to that at all. But the Pareto principle is akin to the idea that the top economic 1% hold an outsized amount of influence on the world. You with me? Incels apply this idea in a baffling way, claiming that 20% of men have monopolized 80% of women. They claim that these 20% of men are the most attractive, tallest, most muscular, most wealthy, which, as everyone knows, being a billionaire and attractive go hand in hand. Interestingly enough, I don't know if this is 100% right, but apparently to be in the global top 20% of earners, you have to make about 34,000 Canadian dollars a year, which I've always been above. Kind of depressing, isn't it? I've also seen references to the top 80% of women, which is not how statistics work. Top 80%, that's just kind of 80%. I don't know how you define top, but I think we left the top a while ago, didn't we? I can't climb 21% of the way up Mount Everest and say, I made it to the top. But the stats don't say the same women find the same men and same things attractive. The OkCupid polls, which if I remember correctly are from before 2010, said that women found about 80% of men to be less than average in attractiveness. There are inherent flaws with the data, however, because I believe the sample size was quite small, but also it was based on some kind of scoring system or something like that, and it's certainly not the same men being attractive to the same women. I am aware that I am painting with a very broad brush here, but men? Not great at posting good photos of themselves, and women tend to take a more holistic view of attraction and compatibility. It's not just looks, voice, body language, confidence, humor, intelligence, scent, shared interests, chemistry, life circumstances are all very important in women finding a man attractive, almost none of which can be accurately conveyed in a dating app. And by the way, I'm not saying that women are perfect creatures, except you, Emma. I'm saying that women are people. Are there women who are just as shallow as manosphere men? You bet. You'll find women among their ranks. One of the more insidious tactics that red pillars use as confirmation bias in their beliefs about women in general is interviewing random women on the street. They don't show you every woman that they have interviewed, and they simply cannot accurately convey the opinions of most women, which is not in their interest anyway. Selectively showing you the women who fit their narrative is part of the game. It's not real.
It's a TV program, a movie.
Everybody knows by now the trope of women only wanting men who are more than 6 feet tall, and while yes, red pillars understand that this is a relatively small percentage of the population who are over 6 feet, they don't take into them the idea that women who demand a man over 6 feet is also a small percentage of the population. And for those women who do, it may lead to an unfulfilling dating life, or just be a lack of maturity that they'll grow out of. And you wouldn't want to date those women anyway, so don't worry about them. Heightism is just a component of lookism, which we've all been dealing with for a very long time. And we're not about body positivity, we're about body neutrality in this house. And if you need more evidence, Jesus Christ, go outside, look around, look at real people. Shit, I've been in relationships with and dated women who are much more attractive than me. Is it because I'm insanely funny, smell good, and intimidatingly brilliant? Probably, but the manosphere has created such a warped view of what women actually want without consulting them and shutting them down when women contradict them. These insecure men can only see looks and wealth as the end-all be-all. By the way, the 80-20 rule is not to be confused with Sturgeon's law, which states 90% of everything is crap, which, true. The second claim is that women are born with worth, and men have to earn it. I'm gonna hold your hand when I tell you this. You, man, woman, everything in between or on either side, you have worth. You are a human in the world. Value is yours to lose. And it happens when you harm, dehumanize, and destroy. But you can gain it by helping, humanizing, and building. I understand the feeling of having no worth. I have had suicidal ideation since I was 12 years old. I have felt worthless, disposable, inadequate, and invisible. Ultimately, it's another lie that the manosphere is reinforcing and selling to you. They are telling you that you have no worth and you can only gain it with them, and they are fucking lying. And it is because of their narrow and unenlightened viewpoint that they tell you that acquiring worthiness is entirely in the realm of material acquisition. Money, status, sex, attention, followers, cars, women consume your way to happiness. Let me ask you this. For having bought into this solution, do you feel better? Has the red pill woken you up to a brighter reality in which you don't feel worthless? Tate, Sneeko, HS, fresh and fit red pillars don't look happy. They're obsessive and angry and paranoid, desperate for external validation, talking about women and status and weakness and performing their idea of manhood constantly, and they're miserable people. They even admit it. How could any of them tell you they have a rewarding, fulfilling life and want you to buy into it? These men love what women can do for them, their channels, their business models, their views, their bank accounts, but they do not respect women as human beings. These men are controlling, paranoid, and abusive. They say they hate OnlyFans models and porn actresses, but have a symbiotic relationship with them. Like the Whatever podcast, they'll have the studio packed with influencers and OnlyFans models, but then talk down to them, insult them, or like HS Tiki-Talkie, have sex with them, but they don't like or respect them. And they talk about how they want a good, clean, virginal Christian wife. It's just the Madonna whore complex at scale right in front of you in real time. The Madonna whore complex was first described by Sigmund Freud, who called it psychic impotence, which is such a great phrase to describe pretty much everyone I'm talking about. You can see it in Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, or many male characters in The Sopranos. A traumatized Vietnam War veteran with violent impulses and sociopathic criminals, famously well-adjusted. Men with this complex cannot hold respectful love and sexual desire for the same woman. In their view, women are either saintly motherly figures or debased horrors who they despise. And boy, are they going to be upset when they find out where babies come from. As much as Louis Theroux's documentary was not much new information, it was interesting to look into the behind-the-scenes actions of these guys and see how they behaved when contradicted in an environment where they're not 100% in control, which is to say they folded like a shitty lawn chair. It's because their beliefs are loosely held, vague, and I've been saying, upheld with a spindly network of deep insecurity. And is it any wonder? Tate was brutally abused by his dad, and when his parents divorced, he moved to England, growing up in poverty. HS Tiki-Talkie's dad abandoned the family, and you see how under the thumb of his mother he is. Myron Gaines grew up in poverty and food insecurity. Justin Waller grew up in a violent and poverty-stricken family. I have a moderate amount of empathy for them. Any of those circumstances can damage a person permanently, and sadly, instead of exercising those demons like I hope you and I are doing here, it became their worldview, a commodity that they're now selling to you and me. There's also the women's equivalent of the red pill called the pink pill. We love to see women in male-dominated fields. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because, frankly, it's a much smaller community and far less dangerous. This could include femcells, female incels, tradwives, and the sprinkle movement, which is basically highly transactional dating. Femcells, incels. Maybe you need to improve your grooming and hygiene and learn how to dress a little better. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of guys not wiping their asses because they think it's gay. Maybe you're not the most attractive person. Maybe you do need to exercise more. But almost certainly you need to work on your social skills and learn how to live a fuller life. You are not inherently unlovable because you're not conventionally attractive. It's just a lie that you've either told yourself or the manosphere sold you. Tradwives inherently do not live by their own tenets. The ideal is 50s housewife, but they make plenty of their own money by being a part of the obnoxious influencer sphere, brand deals, ad revenue, affiliate marketing, merchandising, along with generational wealth and millionaire husbands. There's nothing traditional about a trad wife. Like most other things on the internet, it's a thin veneer, an internet-friendly, marketable patina of somebody with actual beliefs and values. You want traditional? Go be a Mennonite. It's like an Amish person who can get on a plane. But they dress kind of frumpy and don't wear makeup, so it's not as aspirational or marketable. Transactional dating is basically what I touched on before with the women reinforcing patriarchy, where everything has a specific cost, the man is a wallet, the woman gets to live a soft life, and nobody is a partner. It's romanticizing being a financial dependent, and in my opinion, is just a sugar baby relationship with extra steps. I've seen it described as, instead of what do you bring to the table, they say, I am the table, which...
I am the table! I am the table! I am the table! I am the table!
For worship of someone who actively despises you. God damn it. So bad. Anyway, focus, Taylor. We're here to be serious, not talk about a 15-year-old metal album. It's not looking for stability and peace of mind and navigating life's curveballs with another person who may be prepared for it. It's not looking for stability and peace of mind and navigating life's curveballs with another person who may be prepared for it. It's a conditional exchange, obsession with money, and the pursuit of meaningless luxury, and it's been allowed to grow because of social media, influencers, dating apps, and the manosphere. Don't you love the way our culture is going? We all want certainty, simplicity, clarity. We want affection, to feel wanted, to feel desired. We have so many ways of categorizing people into this kind of person, that kind of person, do this and everything will be fine. You're a Taurus, you're this kind of attachment style, you're that kind of personality type, so you should do X and Y and you'll get Z. I am painfully aware that there is no such magic bullet for all these things. This is the hard sell, is that there is no sell. There's no product. There is no certainty. The ideas I'm offering are not pleasant. They're not easy. Ideas like being in a relationship will not fix you. I have been lonely in relationships. I have been lonely out of relationships. It is entirely possible to be deeply in love with someone, to be surrounded by friends, and to still fall into yourself and think, who are these people? The pain is real. And when someone tells you that and offers a solution, it's very attractive, especially if they reinforce something that social media and the people around you are saying. For me, that pain is born from major depressive disorder and a handful of other comorbidities. We have to acknowledge that many things can be true at once. We have real internal pain, that it doesn't excuse how we treat other people, that it's not your fault that that pain exists, that it is your responsibility to manage, process, and improve your condition and not to weaponize it. And sometimes we fail. And I'm going to tell you about a time I failed. And I'll be leaving out a lot of details to protect everyone's privacy. And I'll be leaving out the things I was going through at the time because it's not that important to the point I want to make. I'm not here to make excuses. I'm gonna need a drink for this. It's just water. I don't drink. It's actually called committing to the bit. And I'm procrastinating, I guess. I don't want to talk about it. Some years ago, I was friends with a woman we'll call Gabby. We've been very close friends for a bunch of years and supported each other's creative lives. And during that time, I'd get the odd occasional little crush or fascination, but it would go away. And for the vast majority of that time we knew each other, we were both in relationships. Because of life circumstances, we were able to see each other less and less, but we always had a great time when we did. Then there was a period of weeks we could hang out regularly, and I was struck by, holy shit, I'm having feelings for her. This is very bad. I didn't want it. I didn't want to ruin the friendship. They felt like intrusive thoughts, but I couldn't help the butterflies. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was scared. I tried to kill and bury those feelings, and I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. I felt alone. Finally, I told Gabby what was going on and told her that I just wanted to hear her say no, that it wasn't coming the other way, and maybe it would go away. And she was way nicer and cooler than she needed to be. We talked it out. She confirmed it wasn't mutual. We hugged and we parted ways for a while, though we planned to see each other about 6 weeks or so later. In those 6 weeks, I did a little solo traveling, but I had these ever-creeping thoughts about her and this sickly realization that these feelings were not going away. And on my last night, I wrote a little letter to myself, and those feelings for her felt like I got them out, and I threw the note away. And when I saw her next, it was like a punch in the stomach. Those feelings were still there and were still persistent during those days we were able to hang out. And there were times we talked about heavy things or just life shit, and I would get emotional because of the topic and because I didn't know how to handle how I was feeling. So a short time later, my relationship ended because of completely separate reasons, and I emailed Gabby saying, look, I'm still having these feelings. I need to disconnect fully for a while. I wanted to do the right thing. I wasn't being a good friend. But because I hadn't been dealing with my emotions properly, I was not in a state where I should have been trying to express these very complicated feelings. And to my discredit, I made it sound like those feelings had been going on for years rather than like 2 or 3 months. And to Gabby's credit, she expressed comforting words about my breakup and then set a very clear boundary that our friendship couldn't continue, that she would need time and her own willingness to reestablish contact. And it was a boundary I disrespected because over the course of 2.5 years, I would reach out every few months because while I knew it was completely my fuck up, I was obsessed with the idea that if I could express how sorry I was, if I could apologize enough, if I could convey the weight of the guilt and shame I was rightfully carrying for destroying her trust and security in our friendship, if I could flagellate myself enough, if I suffered enough, I could make things right. I could fix it. I convinced myself that I was all better in a year, that I learned everything that I needed to, that it's all copacetic because I desperately wanted it to be true. And it wasn't true. And finally, Gabby answered and told me she had no wish to see or speak to me and that the ability to make amends had long passed. And I hurt some of the people most important to me. I hurt my ex when I talked to her about it. I hurt Gabby, and I hurt myself. And the right thing for me to have done in that time was nothing. To let her have that boundary unchallenged. And I'm sorry. That's an embarrassing lesson to learn at 33. I'm in therapy now, have been for a few months after not being in it for several years, and it's honestly really helped. It's helped me metabolize the last few years, and there's still lots to go, but it has been a remarkable step in trying to unfuck myself and to grow as a person. I know people want fast results, but this takes time. 30 odd years of experiences aren't going to recontextualize overnight, and I was lucky to find a therapist quite quickly with whom I work well and who's able to challenge me on my thoughts and behaviors. Because that's the point of therapy. Don't forget, it's not to mollycoddle you, tell you nothing is your fault and you're a perpetual victim. It's to address the challenges in your life, understand yourself, and how to equip yourself to live a better life. And this is what I want for you. Find something that helps with the noise, that makes you a better person, and take responsibility when you fall short. I can't fix you. I sure as shit don't have all the answers, and I'm skeptical as to whether or not I have any of them. I'm a weird, depressive, agoraphobic, anxious, constant work in progress. But I know there are things that can help. Healthy community, with other men, for instance. Many of the closest friends I have are women, and often find those friendships emotionally richer and deeper than my friendships with other men. And to be honest, I typically find myself more anxious around other men. That's also quite common when a man's only emotional connection is his girlfriend, his wife, or another select solitary woman. But real friends with other men. Talk to them. They're going through it too. You know they are. You know we are. I tell my closest friends, men or women, that I love them all the time. It's important, I promise you. Be honest, be loving, be caring. It doesn't have to be all emotional baggage handling all the time, but it shouldn't just be your mutual love of hockey. There are tragically few accepted mainstream public male role models these days, and that vacuum is often filled by the likes of Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson or the men we discussed earlier. And while I'm always skeptical of anyone who positions themselves as a role model, look around you. Conan O'Brien, Tom Holland, Terry Crews, the cast of The Lord of the Rings, characters and the actors. Bob Ross, Christopher Judge, Steve Irwin, Mr. Rogers, Pedro Pascal, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jon Stewart, Trevor Noah, George Carlin, Kumail Nanjiani, shit, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah!
No, not that Randy Savage, the real one.
The Macho Man ever cried?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh. It's okay for macho men to show every emotion available right there, you know, because I've cried 1,000 times, I'm gonna cry some more. But I've soared with the eagles and I've slithered with the snakes and I've been everywhere in between. And I'm gonna tell you something right now. There's one guarantee in life, and that there are no guarantees, yeah. And understand this. Yeah. Nobody likes a quitter. Nobody said life was easy, so if you get knocked down, take the standing 8 count, get back up, and fight again. And you're a macho maniac. Dig it.
God, that voice is so infectious. I've had ups and downs, don't worry about it, I'll get over it, but not really. I'm coming for you, Dan Soder.
Like, yeah. Electric bill hasn't been paid, yeah. Gonna be a little bit of a problem. Gonna be a little bit of a problem when they shut the lights. That's the night that the lights went out in Georgia, yeah.
Add Dan Soder to that list. And they don't have to be public figures. Your friend, your brother, your dad, my dad, someone. There's no one way to be a man. If you want a weird example of growth and positive masculinity, here's one. Kratos from God of War. If I said that before 2018, you would think I was having a stroke. But that's growth. At the beginning of God of War 2018, Kratos is broken, grieving his second wife and self-loathing beyond belief. He despises himself after the savagery of the past several games. He denies his own nature, living as a man and not a god, and even hiding his own son's nature from him. He's detached, he's emotionally dulled, but he's trying to connect, and the pain is so evident throughout the story. But over the course of the game, he opens his heart, connects with Atreus and the friends he's made, and in God of War Ragnarok we find him in a much better place. Yes, he still has his rage, and yes, he's still wandering Midgard with a magical ice axe and slaughtering monsters, but he's a changed man. He's grown. Kratos can apologize and admit when he's wrong, value others, seek the wisdom of others, and he loves openly and unapologetically. He had help from Tyr in Valhalla, who helped Kratos reframe and address his past and give meaning to his future. Tyr even dropped one of my favorite quotes that I've adapted for my own use. Happiness is not a destination, it is a practice. What's manlier than making yourself vulnerable so that you can connect with others, so you can love and be loved, so you can understand and be understood? No. I don't have all the answers, but I know it's not the grind set. Life's not about optimizing and mindless consumption, and it's not going to be found in a course sold by an alpha male. Join a class, make some bad art, Go to the same cafe every week. Ask your neighbor their name. Volunteer. Be kind to people without expecting anything in return. Understand, empathize with, and help those who live differently from you. Kurt Vonnegut said, "The only thing he knows is, God damn it, you've got to be kind." Before I go, I really have to thank a bunch of YouTubers I watched who made really thoughtful, intelligent, and thorough video essays that were massively helpful in writing this. I don't know any of them personally, but I like and respect the work I've seen. So thank you to Aphrodisia, Harlan Spinks, Dr. Anna, The School of Life, Bert Simon, Man Carrying Thing, Pop Culture Detective, Shan Spear, Alexander Avila, FD Signifier, Ashley Embers, Mert KK, Front Page, Because I'm Missy, Jason K. Pargan, and Shoe on Head. I've copied a bunch of links to some articles along with specific videos of theirs that were instrumental in making this. Also a huge thank you to Richard Reeves, the author of Boys and Men, a book I have not read, but he seems incredibly level-headed and rational about helping people, and I've included a link for him as well. There were definitely some topics and pieces that I originally intended to include, but, you know, lazy. Thanks for watching, and to quote George Carlin, take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. We are the Smoothing Froms. Fuck.